Hello there, I'm Sarah, your natural endometriosis expert. Welcome to my podcast. This is the place to be for information, advice and tips on managing your endometriosis naturally. I've been managing my own endo now successfully for about 20 years, and I've been running my own therapy business since 2008, helping others to do the same. If you're curious to cut through all the noise and rubbish that's out there and learn the key to managing endometriosis with minimal reliance on drugs and surgery, then this is the only podcast you'll need. Let's get started. Hello there. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about period products, specifically which products are best to use if you have endometriosis and symptoms similar to endo, such as flooding, excessive clotting, or really heavy bleeds. So for those of you who know me, it won't come as any surprise at all that I'm going to say, as a general rule of thumb, I will always advocate sticking to the products that are the most natural. So the least amount of plastics, the least amount of bleaching, of processes, the most natural things that you can use are the best. But in this day and age, we are led to believe, or we are shamed into believing, that we really need to use these super-absorbent pads or super-absorbent tampons, and that we are living in fear of leaks. So we are living in fear of our periods seeping out of our products. And I get that. One of the earlier podcasts that I've done on period shame is one of the most listened to podcasts that I've done. And period shame is really real. And it's not necessarily something that is going to change quickly. It's not necessarily something that will ever change, although I hope it does. But that fear of bleeding is something that is really real. And that's driving our purchasing behaviour when it comes to our period products. So obviously the most natural thing is not to use any period products at all. And I know a lot of you will have raised an eyebrow or maybe even slightly thrown up your cornflakes at the thought of it. But it's actually a real thing. The movement is called free flow. And it's a real thing. There are people out there, not just women, but there are people out there who are actively taking the power back from the periods. And they are not using any period products at all. There was a lady, and I really should have researched this better because I can't remember her name, but there was a lady in the marathon a couple of years ago who ran the London Marathon. She was a drummer in a band, I think, and she ran the London Marathon without any period products at all. And she was photographed with her menstrual blood on her legs. And she was like, well, there's no shame in this. I didn't want to use a period product. I wouldn't have been able to run to the best of my ability. I'm doing this as a sign that it's okay to bleed. So whilst I appreciate that this is possibly a step too far for a lot of people, and to be honest, myself a little bit included as well, that's obviously the most healthy way, is to embrace the flow and not to use anything that stops that flow at all. Slight caveat here as well, just to remember that period blood is blood, so it can carry all the blood-borne infections and diseases that just a cut or another form of bleeding would. So that's just a caveat to say in terms of the when I say it's the healthiest option. But in terms of our period, it is the healthiest option we can go for, because it's not obstructing our blood flow. It's not causing anything else to enter our systems. It's the most healthy option that we have, albeit not necessarily the one that you're all going to rush out and quickly switch to. So let's start with pads and tampons. And I'm not going to call them sanitary pads, but I am going to say that they are deliberately made to look sanitary. So the colours that they use, the bright white is chosen because it looks sanitary, it looks clean. The little blue stripes, again, it looks sanitary, they look very clinical. However, in order to get them this colour, and I'm talking about pads and tampons here, in order to get them this colour, they undergo bleaching, chemical bleaching. So you get the chemicals as the residue from the bleaching within that. And also there's plastics involved in the manufacture. So you tend to get different layers within these products. So to make them absorbent, you get a lot of plastics, and you get some polymers and things that generally you wouldn't consider eating, but we don't think twice about using in our most sensitive and delicate of areas. So we have a lot of things, a lot of chemicals, VOCs, We get endocrine disruptors in there. There really are some horrible things that are going into these products. And even the pads, whilst the pads don't go inside us, they're sitting against a very delicate area of skin. The pH balance down there is very fine. The thinness of our skin as well around the vagina and in that general area is very, very thin, and it's quite absorbent. So all of these things are actually sitting right on our skin. A lot of women I work with really struggle with irritation, and a lot of that is due to these period products, especially the modern day ones as well, that use all these fragrances and scents, and they are just, again, they're just chemicals. They're just artificial chemicals that are not doing our skins any good at all. I mean, think of it from another perspective. Would you attach these to any other area of your body and walk around with them for 3 or 4 days continuously? And I know you changed the pad, but would you do that in any other area of your body? So there's lots of nasty things in terms of chemicals and things that they put in, and these chemicals, some of them are proven to be carcinogenic. Some of them are proven to be endocrine disruptors. They have huge impacts on our hormones. They disrupt our pH levels. They're not nice. They're not nice at all. And then also, because we're having the ultra-absorbency these days, whilst a lot of times it's seen as a positive in the marketing, it's seen as really good, you're not going to leak. It's super absorbent. You can wear it for longer. The reality, aside from all the plastics and the core, the chemical core that's going in to make this absorbency, it's actually absorbing everything else as well. So it's absorbing all the natural moisture that comes in contact or anywhere near that pad or that tampon. So you're not just absorbing your menstrual flow, you're also absorbing the natural moistures that we need within our system in order to keep things moving. So a lot of women I work with, a lot of people I work with have thrush or get thrush around that time of the bleed, and a lot of that is due to the fact that these ultra absorbent products are just completely disrupting the natural pH values and completely disrupting all the natural moisture that's down there. So add to that as well the fact that the super-absorbency may actually be sort of accelerating your flow of bleeding, if that makes sense. So if you can imagine, it's almost like a not quite as strong as a Hoover, but kind of that Hoover effect. That super-absorbency is drawing in a lot of moisture. So I've said about drawing in the moisture generally, but actually if you think about how your flow is naturally making its way down, then it gets to a point where it's going to start being drawn in by this super-absorbency of the towel. And again, a lot of women I work with have really bad cramping when it comes to the bleed. And obviously a lot of that is to do with the hormonal imbalance, a lot of that is to do with the inflammation and the cysts that we have. But actually, a lot of it is alleviated as soon as they start switching period products. And I do believe that this is caused by the super-absorbency levels, in effect, almost like drawing down the period before it's due to come out, drawing down the blood before it's due to come out. Now, I can't prove that, and I can't find any studies to say that that's the case, but when you look at how the cramping is feeling, almost like that pulling sensation, and again, a lot of that isn't to do with the products they're using, because I don't use those towels and I still get that feeling. However, mine got a lot better when I stopped using towels, and a lot of my clients report that pulling sensation, that cramping sensation gets a lot better if they're not using those period products. So definitely think about swapping if you're using towels, if you're using tampons. Now, if you are wedded to towels or even to tampons, although, like I say, a lot of the people I work with don't use tampons anyway, because sometimes tampons and endometriosis aren't particularly compatible. Although, again, there's a caveat to this, that a lot of my clients with endo, it's actually something called cervical erosion. That's one word for it. That's one name for it. It's not a particularly nice name for it. But a lot of clients I work with actually have cervical erosion and they're not aware of it. And that can be one of the reasons why tampons are particularly uncomfortable. So it's not necessarily endometriosis. It can be a related thing that we have to put up with that's causing that discomfort. But that aside, a lot of the people I work with don't use tampons. If you do use tampons and you don't particularly want to switch, if you are wedded to the idea of towels being the best protection that you can get against leaks, then I would urge you just to switch to more natural products. So there are plenty of alternatives out there. Look for natural organic cotton pads and tampons, and they will reduce all of the things that I've talked about. A lot of them are still bleached. So if you look for the non-bleached ones as well, then that will just minimise the use of the chemicals and the use of the plastics within the products themselves. If you are looking to shed, for want of a better word, the tampons and the pads, then a great alternative is the menstrual cup. I am a massive advocate of the menstrual cup. To me, this is a fabulous solution if you're not quite ready for free-flowing, but if you're wanting to move away from towels and or tampons, then menstrual cups are a great alternative. And there used to really just be one market leader, but these days there are a plethora of different brands out there, a plethora of different makes. Prices as well have changed. You can get them from as little as about, well, I think I saw one for less than £10 the other day. So prices vary. I think the most expensive one I've seen is about £28. So prices vary. There's different brands, there's different sizes. But menstrual cups, I would say, are the optimum if you are wanting to move away from the more sort of chemical, the more mass-produced kind of towels. Now, obviously, these have an environmental impact. So, whereas your sanitary, and again, I'm using that word sarcastically now. You can't see my face, but I've got a sarcastic smile on. Sanitary towels are not very sanitary when it comes to littering, when it comes to clogging up our oceans, when it comes to clogging up our landfill. Moon cups, sorry, brand name. I'm not on any affiliate or anything, but menstrual cups are obviously a lot better when it comes to the environmental impact because they are reusable and you can use them for years. If you look after them correctly, you can use them for years. I have no idea what the lifetime span of a menstrual cup is. I seem to remember it's about 10 years, but I don't know. Again, I should have researched that a little bit better. But yeah, there are lots of different brands, there's lots of different makes, there's lots of different sizes. And again, I work with people who have I work with a lot of people who can't stomach the idea. I used to be like that. I used to think it was a horrendous idea and why would anybody want to do that? But I've been using them for years now. I don't know how many years, a lot of years, and I have never looked back. The benefits to me, obviously the environmental benefits, but also it connects me more to my period. I can't believe how little I actually bleed, even on my heavy days. And even though, I don't get flooding anymore, but I still do get heavy periods. And even on my heavy period days, I can't believe how little blood there is. Even when there's a lot of blood, I can't believe how little it is, if that makes sense. And again, I think a lot of that is due to how our periods look when it comes to sanitary towels. So when you're bleeding on the bright white absorbent, super absorbent pad, it looks like there's a heck of a lot of blood there. And when you're worrying about it leaking out, when you're conscious of the fact that you are bleeding, it feels like there's a lot coming out. But actually, when you start to use a menstrual cup and you actually collect the blood that's coming out, there isn't a lot there. I mean, I suppose there is. But I was surprised just how, I'm not going to say how little, but how not a lot of blood there was. So it's connected me to my flow, to my period, to my menstrual cycle that I just didn't have when I was using disposable products, because literally you would take the towel off, bin it, never even think about it. And I do work with people who can't stomach the thought of even looking at their pads while they're changing them because they are so disconnected to their periods. So using a menstrual cup can really connect you to your periods, and you'll sort of say to me, well, what's the benefit of that? And you'll hear me talking in different podcasts, and if you work with me, you'll hear me talk about the importance of being connected to our cycles, the importance of loving our cycles and loving our wombs. This is part and parcel of that. So these menstrual cups strengthen that connection to our womb. They obviously are more environmentally beneficial, but they're also better for us when it comes to endometriosis. Now, cups in general, they hold a lot more blood than a towel, than a pad, so you can wear these cups for a lot longer than you can any other products, or they will take more blood. So if you are a heavy bleeder, then this cup will hold a lot more than a towel. So if you're changing your towel every hour, you might get 2 or 3 hours from a cup. Now, a lot of people I work with report that they bleed too heavily, that the cup is leaking. So there's 2 options there. I would, if that sounds like you, I would try changing the size of the cup, so going for a size up, or just changing the cup more regularly. I suspect if you go a size up, that will mitigate that issue. Because actually how a cup works, you can get them, silicone I think are the most popular now, but you can get rubber and different combinations. But essentially what happens, the cup goes up and it creates a seal. If it's in place where it should be, it creates a seal. And that seal shouldn't, I don't like that word, but that seal shouldn't let anything through it. So once that cup is in place, that should be a seamed, is that the right word? Anyway, it should create a seal that nothing can get through. Sealed, that's the word. A sealed area. So you're bleeding into the cup. You can swim with your cup, you can sleep with your cup in. There shouldn't be a leak if it's in place properly. So that's the other thing as well. It could be a cup that's slightly too small, or it could be that the cup isn't positioned high enough. So again, just have a bit of a play, have a trial and error. See if you can find the position and the cup that's right for you. Other people I talk to say that they just don't like the sensation of pulling out. It feels like it's pulling all their insides out, or as has happened to me on numerous occasions when I first started, they pull the cup out and all hell breaks loose. It pops and the contents goes everywhere. And yeah, that's not pleasant at all, especially if it's bad enough at home, but if you're at work or somewhere else, it's even worse. So again, I would say the knack to removing a menstrual cup is to first of all break the seal. So a lot of them, they have like a little tail on the bottom. A lot of them say just to pull the tail and the seal will break. What I find is the best bet is just to insert a finger or your thumb and just break the seal manually and then pull it out. And that alleviates a lot of that issue as well. So we've got something here, we've got a product here that doesn't use any chemicals. Yes, okay, it's a silicone cup, but it doesn't actually use any chemicals in terms of absorbing. So you're not, your blood isn't going into. You're not moist. You're not absorbing. The product isn't absorbing any of your moisture, if that makes sense. So the chemical reaction is less. So there's no chance of toxic shock syndrome, or very, very slight, very, very slim chance of toxic shock syndrome with a cup, because you're not getting that same level of toxicity that you would with a tampon. And like I say, I could never use tampons because they hurt me. It was just not right for me. But I've never had a problem with the right menstrual cup. So I definitely recommend trying that. So there we go. I hope that's a good overview of period products and which period products to avoid and which are best used when you've got endometriosis. If you do have any questions, then please do get in touch. Like I say, it's no surprise that I've gone for the natural option. And if you're not into free flowing, then it's no surprise, I'm sure, that I've gone for a menstrual cup. It has revolutionised the way I think about my periods. It's one of the fundamental things now that I try and talk. I can't obviously sort of tell people what to use, but it's one of the things that I try and talk to my clients about, and in terms of how it can revolutionise your period, and how even with endometriosis it's not an issue. Actually, one of the things I haven't talked about, which I wanted to briefly mention as well, is if you subscribe to the theory of retrograde menstruation being one of the causes of endometriosis, and this is something I had to get my head around, because whilst they've debunked the myth of retrograde menstruation for endometriosis, one of the things that in Chinese medicine we learn that is one of the causes of endometriosis is that stagnation. It is the fact that blood sits, that blood isn't free flowing, that blood is blocked from going through and out, which causes endo. So I did a lot of research around this and a lot of thinking around it, and actually it takes a lot of time. So again, I liken this to a river. If you think about the Nile, I always talk about the Nile. If you think about the Nile and its subsidiaries, and if you think about the length of time it takes, everything's flowing freely, a tree falls across it, and in time the water turns stagnant. You start to get the toxic build-up of the stagnation, but that happens over time. So although I talk about the need for our blood to be free-flowing and water and chi to be free-flowing through our systems, if you're using a menstrual cup, it is stopping that bleed, but it's only for a very short period of time. You're not wearing that cup long enough for it to actually impact. So it's exactly the same as something like a slow-moving something crossing the river. You're not actually using it to the detriment. And there have been studies as to whether using menstrual cups can exacerbate or can even trigger a stroke, cause endometriosis. And they've pretty much debunked that theory. So they've kind of said there is no risk. So in Western medicine, they've said there is no risk to it making endometriosis worse. And that's backed up in Eastern medicine as well, in Chinese medicine. Yes, okay, we're blocking the flow, but it's just a temporary block. And it's still way better than using all the synthetic and chemical components of the sort of the mainstream towels and tampons. So I hope that helps. There was a little addition there that I forgot to mention, but I hope that helps. If you do have any questions, please do get in touch. If you'd like me to do podcasts on specific topics, then please do get in touch. It's always lovely to hear from you. And I will always reply where I can. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope that you found this podcast helpful. If you did, please hit follow so you can listen to more, and please also share it with anyone else who you think will benefit. And don't forget, if you're looking for women's health treatments, workshops or support within your workplace, you can find all of my services, including our monthly virtual clinic, over at www.healthyandwomenshealth.com. I'll see you next time.